Hey grade 6. Today we're going to be looking at something called decimal fractions. And so we're not going to be using any actual decimal notation like I talked about the other day, but we're just going to be talking about decimal fractions. And so for us to do that, our learning target by the end of the video and the practice is that I can represent decimal fractions in expanded form. Some of the skills that I need to know. Number one, to recognize increasing and decreasing patterns. I need to be able to use grids to represent tenths and hundredths. Number three, I need to be able to write equivalent fractions. And number four, I need to be able to add fractions with like denominators, which just means that the denominators are the same number. So where we start today is just a quick review of some powers of 10. This has been talked about in class already, but powers of 10 are just basically ones with zeros behind them. So numbers like 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, etc., those are all powers of 10. We can get powers of 10 by multiplying, not just tens by tens, but it could be like 10 times 100, it could be, 1,000 times 100. As long as it's a 1 with some combination of zeros behind it, that constitutes a power of 10. So, to the meat of today's quick video is decimal fractions. I have a little table here and I have two headings. One says decimal fractions and the other one says not decimal fractions. So if you look at the ones where it says decimal fractions, we have numbers like 5 over 10, 4 over 10, 3 over 100, and then 425 over 1,000. Those are just four examples of an infinite number of decimal fractions. If you will notice, on decimal fractions, all of the denominators are powers of 10. So there are tens, hundreds, thousands, could be 10,000s, could be 100,000s, etc. As long as the denominator is a power of 10, it is a decimal fraction. If it is not a power of 10 in the denominator, in other words, 1 over 2, 2 over 5, 4 over 17, 289 over 3,000, then it is not a decimal fraction. Even though 3,000 is a multiple of 10, it's not a power of 10, so it's not, it can't be a decimal fraction. You may also say, well, I can, if I have 1/2, I can get 5 over 10 and get an equivalent fraction that way. That's fine. It doesn't make 1/2 a decimal fraction. It makes 5 over 10 a decimal fraction. So just a quick review of equivalent tenths and hundredths. If we have 3 tenths, you'll notice there is the diagram on right here. This is 3 tenths, would be the picture representation. If you multiply those numbers by 10, you end up with 10 times as many squares. We now have 100 squares, and then 30 of them are colored in, and so 3 tenths we say is equal to 30 over 100, and that's kind of an important concept, because when we get into adding some stuff right here, it becomes a bit more important, because what we want to do is get the denominators the same. We talked about that in our fraction stuff before, but you want to change 3 over 10 to 30 over 100, because then if you're going to add this number, which is 6 over 100, then you need to be able to add fractions with like denominators. So you need to really get 30 over 100 plus 6 over 100, which is going to give us 36 over 100. This is just showing it to you without the diagram, but again we have 3 over 10 times 10 plus 6 over 10 gives us 30 over 100 plus 6 over 100, which is 36 over 100. Moving on from there, the next step I suppose would then be adding in thousandths. And so we have 3 decimal fractions, 3 over 10 plus 9 over 100 plus 6 over 1,000. And again, because we want all common denominators, what you want is a number, or 3 numbers, over 1,000 to be able to add them together. So to convert from 3 over 10 to a number over 1,000, we have to multiply both numbers by 100. So you would end up with 300 over 1,000. And that's going to be plus 90 over 1,000 if you multiply each of those numbers, 9 over 100 by 10. So it's 300 over 1,000 plus 90 over 1,000 plus, and then that 6 is actually not going to change because it's already over 1,000. So it's plus 6 over 1,000, and that's going to give you 396 over 1,000. A couple things to just point out. Sometimes the question that you're going to be asked does not have either the tenths or the hundredths, or maybe it doesn't have the thousands, I don't know. But just pay attention to that. So what you would end up there with is 4 over 10, which would convert to 400 over 1,000. that would be the equivalent fraction, the equivalent decimal fraction. So 400 over 1,000 plus 9 thousandths would give us 409 over 1,000. Just a couple of last things to be aware of. Just check to be sure which decimal fraction is missing. If you're missing the tenths or the hundredths. Secondly, you might need to just only add the hundredths or just the thousandths. Again, just pay close attention in your books when you're doing that stuff to make sure that it's that you're doing it correctly. After that, it's time to do some practice in your workbooks. So check the classroom and you can see what the practice is going to be for that stuff. Okay, have a great day.